Assalamu alaikum. You are studying the course Electronic Commerce and I am your instructor Saadat Nisar. We are into our 19th lecture. If you recall, I told you that we develop our backend basically for two purposes. One, that we want to query with the databases, and secondly, we want to maintain the state in the stateless environment. I also gave you an example that, say, whenever we go for some shopping from a shop online, we are normally required to take three different steps. One is that we have to provide our registration information. There is a web form in which we provide certain registration information, and then there is a button, register or submit button, and using that we supply this information to the server side. Then the second step is that there is a shopping cart before us, and we make the selection of the items and we put the items that we want to buy in that shopping cart, and then there is a button add to cart, and when we click that add to cart button, usually what happens is that there is a new screen opened for us, and then we have some shipping details and we have some billing information on that screen, and there is a confirm order button available there at. When we click at that confirm order button, and that is the conclusion of our transaction, then that means that our transaction is now through. You can in fact, these are three different steps, three different clicks that we make to complete our online shopping. One, the registration information. The second step, the add to cart. And the third step is the confirm order. Because HTTP is stateless, so that means that these three different clicks or these three different steps, they do not have any linkage among them. However, we want to create that link. In order to make a comprehensive, complete e-commerce transaction, it is necessary that there is a link between these three different steps. To achieve that purpose, then we code our scripts, we do certain programming tricks so that this linkage is created. There are various options using which we can maintain the state, and I would just be telling you how we do that. There's a slide before you. You can see that one of the options is that use your script to write data to a temporary file on the server and to start each time by reading any data in that file. That simply means that on the side you have a temporary file, and in that temporary file you keep recording the information, the details of each and every step, and you connect the information recorded in these different steps with the help of an ID. And at the end, so say when we click at the confirm order button, that is the concluding stage, at the end, the confirm order stage, there would be a script, a program that would generate then some query, and with the help of that, all that information which was obtained in different steps, that information would be recorded in the databases. So that is one way. We have a temporary file on the server side, and we use that temporary file in which we keep recording the information, and at the end, from that temporary file, all the information is inserted in the databases. Then the second option, as you can see, is use JavaScript to process activities in a given session and send results to the server end only. Here in this second option for the maintenance of state, what we do is that we apply the cookies concept. You remember we use JavaScript to create cookie files. Cookies are those text files which are hosted, which are recorded, stored in the hard disk of the client machine, And what happens in this option is that the information which we get from the user, that information pertaining to each different step resides in the cookie files on the client side, and then at the end, the confirm order stage, all these cookies of these previous steps, they would revert to the server side, and under a common ID, all these different piece of information, they would be recorded in the databases. In other words, we use the client side, we use the cookies concept to maintain the state, and we do not keep anything on the server side. We keep every information on the hard disk of the client, and using the hard disk of the client, then we achieve the maintenance of the state. Then the third option is that to hide data in forms and send it back and forth. Now, that may appear to be a little difficult concept. I'll just try to give you a feel of it, a broader concept. The further details are, I don't think so they are really required, but you just have a basic concept here. The hidden form fields, they are in fact utilized to maintain state in this option. So what happens is that we keep our information in the forms, in the hidden fields, and we rotate this information back and forth within the forms. And in this way, we maintain the state between these three different steps for that matter. Now, just to illustrate it a little further, I can show you a slide. You can notice that there is the form tag, name form 1, then there are two input tags. A pair of input tags is being used, input type hidden, name shirt 1, value 25. Here you can notice that I am using type hidden, and I keep the name of the item as shirt 1. The item code, in other words, its value is 25 here. And then there is another input tag, type checkbox, name check 1, and the option is blue cotton shirt. You can notice that it's a pair of input tags, they are related with each other. The checkbox would appear before you on the screen being a user, but the hidden type information, that would not be displayed, although it would be there inside the form, like the information, the item code, value 25, that would be there in the form pertaining to that particular checkbox, but that would not be visible. That would remain hidden because we have kept the type as hidden. And then after the break tag, then there is another pair of input tags, then input type shirt 2, now item code value 26, then input type checkbox, name check 2, green cotton shirt. This is the second option, the second item, green cotton shirt. And then the third item, input type hidden, name shirt 3, value 27, and for that its corresponding checkbox, input type checkbox, name check 3, and white silk shirt, and so on. And at the end I can create two buttons, the submit button and the reset button, and then I can close the form. This is just a chunk out of the total code, just to give you some idea how the hidden form fields work. I can also point out here that we can use a record set object. This is an object that can be used in ASPs, and if we use that in a for loop, what can happen is that these pair of input tags with type hidden and type checkbox respectively, these pairs would automatically be generated, and the records or the information, the options stored in the databases, that would appear against those checkboxes respectively. So that means that the record would be picked up from the databases automatically. Whatever options, whatever items are available for sale, they would be picked up from the databases because of the for loop, and all that information would be automatically generated and printed before us. Now, what is important to note here, that the item code and the item name, that is hidden, although it is there inside the form, but it is not visible, right? Whenever a user would make a selection of certain items, and after that the user would press the button add to cart, that information which he has selected, that information would travel to the server side. There some script would read that information, and it would then open a new screen which contains the button confirm order. And when that new screen would open with the button confirm order, the item code and the item name which were hidden in the previous step, that information would be reverted, would be provided to the user in the confirm order screen, right? And when the user confirms the order by clicking this button confirm order, all that information, that selected items, all that data, that would be then, with the help of some query, that information would be then recorded in the order table in the databases. So what you can understand is that in these two steps, the add to cart step and the confirm order step, we have been able to achieve the state. We have been able to maintain the state. The information we supplied in the add to cart form, that went to the server side. The server side then opened a new form for us with the confirm order button, and in that confirm order form, it supplied us all that information which was provided in the input type hidden, that is the item code value and the item name. And once the user clicks the confirm order button, then all his selections, all his confirmation is then recorded pertaining to these selected items in the databases. So we can say that in these two steps we then achieve the state. The next option can be that we keep everything in a database. Now that means that we keep everything in the databases, like the information pertaining to the first step, the registration step, that information would be recorded in the databases. Then the new screen with add to cart button would open, and whatever we do there in that form, add to cart, all that information again would be recorded in the databases, and then a new screen would appear with confirm order button, and then this would conclude our transaction. So we keep everything, every information pertaining to different steps in the database, and we connect that information with the help of a common ID. That is not a very favorable option because it is relatively costly, it can be more time consuming, so it is not a very popular option these days. Then you can see that we can use servlets also. So servlets, which are very fast Java applications, we have some understanding of these in our previous lecture, and wherever we want to achieve fastness, we can use servlets for processing point of view. So wherever we want our information to be processed fastly, we can use these fast Java applications for the maintenance of state in any of the above options wherever it is possible. This gets tricky. Indeed, it gets tricky because this is not a very simple thing. If you want to create the maintenance of state in the stateless environment, then you should have a solid knowledge in the programming, and using that then you can achieve your purpose. You can apply any of these options or a combination thereof for that objective. But at this stage, I just expect that you have a broad understanding, a broad concept about this notion. Now, next main thing that I would like to talk about is the client-server architecture. You should know this thing that we can divide our systems architecture into different tiers or different processing zones. So there can be 1-tier architecture, 2-tier, 3-tier, up to n-tier architectures. These are possible. And the example of a 1-tier architecture you can see in the slide. This is a very primitive type of architecture, very old. It is not in fashion these days. You can see there is a mainframe and a few display terminals, computer machines, they are attached to this mainframe. What happens is that all the processing takes place on this mainframe, on this terminal alone. And the results are just displayed on the computers attached with the mainframe. These 3 computers which are attached with the mainframe, they do not do any processing. The processing we can say that is taking place only on the mainframe. So therefore, it is an example of single tier, 1-tier architecture. Another example of 1-tier architecture is when we do the reverse, which means that all the processing now takes place on the client machines, and the file server just acts as a file storing device. It supplies the files, and then the processing takes place on the client machines on these files, and then these files are sent back to the file server for storage again. So you can see in the slide again the example of a 1-tier architecture. In the step number 1, the client machine asks for a file to the file server. File server provides that file in the step number 2 to the client machine. Then the client machine processes that file. It works on that file. Say it's an Excel file for that matter. The client machine can do some typing job, fill some tables, etc., whatever. And then after doing that processing, then the client saves that file in the step number 4 on the file server. It in fact returns the file to the file server in step number 4. As you can see again, you can notice that all the processing is taking place on the client machine. The file server is just acting as a storage device. It is not doing the processing job. Then comes the 2-tier architecture or the client-server architecture, in which the processing takes place on 2 different terminals, 2 different processing zones, and that is why we call that a 2-tier architecture. So you are familiar with the idea that in case of an HTTP request, the HTTP request is processed on the server side, and the code is provided therefore to the client machine, and if it's an HTML page, then the processing of that HTML code is on the client side. So we can say it's a 2-tier architecture. A simple client server model represents a 2-tier architecture, some processing on the client side, some processing on the server side. You can see that concept in the slide before you. Web client and web server, they are connected with each other. User sends an HTTP request, and there is a response to that HTTP request by the web server, and it's an example of a 2-tier architecture. Then comes the 3-tier architecture, again when the processing zones are such that some processing takes place on one zone, some processing on the second, some on the third zone. We can say that it gives rise to a 3-tier architecture, and you can see in the slide before you the example of a 3-tier architecture. There is a web client that would be the tier 1, the first processing zone where some functional processing, say HTML processing, that would take place. And then there is the tier 2, the web server. They are connected with each other with the help of internet, both the client machine and the server machine. Step number 1, the client sends an HTTP request. That request is read by the web server, and then that request is picked by the web server. And then in the step number 3, the web server communicates with the database management system. Now your database management system is your tier 3, the third processing zone. That means your databases, your querying job is taking place on a different terminal, on a different system. We call that tier 3, and the result from that tier 3 that goes back to the web server in step number 4, and then from web server this HTTP request response, and then from web server the response to this HTTP request is supplied to the web client. So you have seen that the processing here has taken place in 3 tiers. We can add another tier, a 4th tier in this setup. Say if I process the payments made by the clients, by the customers on a different tier, then I can say that I have created a 4th tier. So my database management system is residing on tier 3. The payment processing is taking place on a different tier. That would then give rise to a 4-tier architecture. And similarly, we can generate up to n tiers. We divide the processing into different processing zones, and we can say that we have added accordingly that much number of tiers to our architecture. Next, I want to discuss with you that what are different web server software and e-commerce software that can be utilized on the server side. It's again an important piece of information, and being e-commerce students, you must have some idea about it. You know that web server is that machine on which there is a special operating system. There is a web server software also along with that operating system. And when we connect that machine with the internet, that machine then is in a position to accept HTTP requests or satisfy those HTTP requests, apply those web pages which are stored in such web server. The decision as regards what type of web server software is suitable, what type of web server operating system is useful or suitable for us, that would mainly be dependent upon the volume and the type of website activities. So in case there are a lot of transactions being processed on the server side, or there is a high traffic volume on a particular web server, then in that eventuality you would require a web server software and a particular operating system that can easily be upgraded, that is more efficient, and therefore your choice would be mainly dependent upon the traffic volume and the website activity. Then I want to talk about the web server operating systems. Operating systems, as you know, they provide the interface to the users. So these interface, they provide the access to the user to different resources available on the system, and with the help of an operating system, certain programs can run on that computer machine. And similarly, the operating system also provides input and output services to the devices which are connected to the system, like printer, monitor, etc. You can see in the slide what are the various operating systems which are popularly in use in case of web servers. So at the top of the list, you can see the Microsoft Windows NT server, then Microsoft Windows 2000 Advanced Server, it is quite popular. Then Microsoft.NET Server, these are the three Microsoft products, and then Linux, and then Solaris. The Microsoft operating systems, they are quite handy, they are easy and simple to operate. On the other hand, Linux is quite popular. It is considered to be more secured relatively. By the way, Linux is an open source operating system, which means that it was developed by the joint efforts of a community of programmers, and it is free of any cost. You can download without any charge. Then Solaris is a Unix based operating system, and it is also quite popular. There are certain public websites on Solaris has been quite popularly being used. Then what are the web servers software that we can use on the web server machine? In this regard, you can see I have in fact shown three different web server software. One is Apache HTTP server, second Microsoft Internet Information Server or IIS, and the third is Sun1, its previous name iPlanet or Netscape web server. The Apache HTTP server again is open source code, which means that it is free of any cost, and it was developed by the joint efforts of a community of programmers, and it is quite usefully, quite popularly being applied these days. Microsoft Internet Information Server, IIS, is also very handy. The main thing about IIS is that it has the active server page ASP engine in it, and which enables us to have dynamic web pages generated for us, and it therefore provides a unique environment whereby we can have some HTML coding which is embedded with the ASP code, and then that results into the generation of dynamic pages. Sun1 is a product which was resulted due to the joint efforts of AOL Time Warner Company and Sun Microsystems. It is also quite popular, and it runs both on Windows and Solaris. Its previous name was iPlanet Enterprise Server, and also it was known as Netscape Enterprise Server. Sun1 web server software, according to a survey, is being used by up to 40% of the public websites today. So these were some of the options as regards the web server software. Now let's talk about the web server hardware. The web server machine is typically faster and relatively larger in size as compared to the typical desktop PCs. It has got more memory also. Its hard disk drive is faster. Its processor is relatively faster as compared to simple desktop machines. The prominent web server hardware vendors or the suppliers, they on their websites, they provide a configuration tool. So Dell, Hewlett Packard or Sun, if you buy the web server hardware from their websites, there would be a configuration tool that would allow you, in fact, to specify your requirements and in a way allow you to build your own web server hardware. The performance of the web server is mainly gauged on the basis of two factors. One is throughput and the second is response time. Throughput means that how many HTTP requests can simultaneously be handled by the web server in a unit time. Similarly, response time means that how much time is taken by the web server in processing a single HTTP request. These are the two main factors, throughput and response time. We keep them in mind, and we also have the notion as to what is the anticipated load on our web server before we make a decision about the web server software that we are going to choose. Then web server hardware architecture is another point that you should have in mind. Many e-commerce websites, they are divided into different tiers, and there are certain very large e-commerce websites on which thousands of transactions they are processed, and they have to at times supply thousands of different web pages to the customers. So these are large websites, and they are overloaded with the processing work. There, as an administrator, you have to plan as to how you want to configure your web servers in such an environment. So there are two different approaches for that. One is that you use very few but very powerful server machines, and you create a tier of all these different powerful web server machines, and they do the processing job. That approach is called a centralized approach. And then the other option is the decentralized approach, in which you can have some small, less fast computer machines, but they are quite a few in number, and you distribute your workload on these different web servers, and in this way you get your processing done. Then web hosting would be another important consideration for an administrator, and in case of web hosting, there are different options available. You know, the ISPs, they are in the business of providing us the internet access. One type of hosting is shared hosting. So in that eventuality, what happens is that a web server is allocated by the ISP to us, and in that web server we have our website running, but on that same web server the websites of other clients of that ISP, they are also there. So therefore it's a shared approach. We say it's a share hosting. Then in case of dedicated hosting, the ISP would exclusively reserve a web server machine for us, on which only our website would be hosted. No other client of ISP would have its website running on that web server, and then that would be called dedicated hosting. In both these types of hosting, the shared or dedicated, the hardware is provided by the ISP, so that hardware resides on the ISP's location. ISP is responsible for the maintenance of this hardware, and then ISP connects the web server with its router or other hardware. Another option is co-location hosting. In that eventuality, the ISP would provide us the physical space, and we would bring our own web server hardware. We'll install our web server software on that, and then the ISP would connect that web server with its router or other hardware devices. In that case, we are just using the physical space provided by the ISP. We bring our own hardware, web server hardware. The fourth option is self-hosting. So wherever we want to run our web server in-house, we can use this approach. In that case, then the web server, we arrange that and then we place it in-house, and we call that approach as self-hosting. So with this discussion about the web servers, web server software, let's talk about the e-commerce software. So e-commerce software we use when we want to develop our e-commerce website. We need to have certain features. We need to have a shopping cart. We need to process the transactions. For that purpose, it is imperative that we have our e-commerce software available. The fact that what type of e-commerce software we shall choose would mainly depend upon the size and objectives of our online business. So in case we have a large e-commerce website where thousands of different transactions take place, our choice for a particular e-commerce software can be different from the one where our site is a small one. Typically, our e-commerce software must at least provide 3 features. That is, number 1, a catalog display, number 2, a shopping cart, and number 3, transaction processing, as you have noticed in the slide before you. In case we have a big e-commerce site, which is a complicated one, in that eventuality, we may want to add certain different unique features, and for that, our e-commerce software package can include certain added features. There is a list of such features you can see on the slide. Middleware, application integration, web services, integration with ERP software, supply chain management software, customer relationship management software, content management software, and knowledge management software. Let's analyze these factors one by one. First, the catalog display. You know, a catalog is a list of items. So there can be 2 different types of catalogs, the static catalog and dynamic catalog. In case of a static catalog, it will be a simple HTML list, and in case you want to edit that list, you do the editing job using HTML. This is used where your e-commerce shop is a very small one, just a few items for sale. But your dynamic catalog would be required where your e-commerce shop is relatively big, and it would be then database driven. So the dynamic catalog would pick the details, the description of the items for display from the database itself, where this information would be stored. So you may have noticed that there are e-commerce shops. When we visit those shops and we make certain selections, the details about the price, the description, the relevant features of that particular item or product, they are displayed before us. That is because a dynamic catalog does that for us. Then the shopping cart capabilities, the next feature. The shopping cart is also called the shopping bag or the shopping basket. In fact, this is an electronic basket. Whatever items we select for purchase, these items, they are piled up, they are stored in that shopping cart before we conclude our transaction. Previously, there were form-based shopping carts, which would mean that there would be a web form before the user in which there would be some lists or some text boxes. The user would be required to type the price, the item code, and other description about the item, and then he would be able to conclude the transaction. But now it is replaced with the electronic shopping cart. In electronic shopping cart, you can add as many items as you want. You do not require to type any information as such in the text boxes or otherwise. Whatever items you want to purchase, you select those items and they are stored in the shopping cart. You can add different new items. You can even remove items which you have earlier selected in case of electronic shopping cart. Then whenever you want to conclude your transaction, then you press the checkout button or the confirm order button, and in that case there would be some shipping cost detail, some payment detail that would be shown to you, and you confirm your order after that. Now, there is also an option of storing your selected items before you confirm them in some virtual storage. There are certain websites, you visit those websites, you make your selection of the items, and you do not confirm your transaction as yet, and after some time in some other session you go to that website, then your selections would still be there for you. You just then need to confirm those selections. These selections would keep residing in the virtual storage that would be provided by the e-commerce software. The third feature is the processing of the transactions. So the processing of the transaction, normally it includes the calculations of taxes, say the cost of the shipping, etc. And whenever you press the checkout or the confirm order button, these calculations, this processing of the transaction then takes place, and again your e-commerce software must provide this feature for you. There are certain e-commerce softwares which are directly connected with the shipping companies. So in order to get the updated or current shipping costs, they can receive this information directly from the shipping companies. So that is another feature which some e-commerce softwares can provide. Then the special features which we can add, which I had shown you a list of 7 or 8 different features, where the websites, they are large ones. We may want to add any of these features. First of such features is middleware. Middleware means that software which in fact would connect the e-commerce software on the web server with the accounting system of that online business. So that would be done directly. With the help of middleware, that would be possible that whatever web sales you have obtained, that information would directly be fed or stored into the accounting system which is maintained by the online shop. Your e-commerce software package therefore may have a middleware option in it if you want that. Then application integration is another feature. Application integration is required when say you have a program which processes the payments received from the customers. That program would be called an application program, and you want that program to be compatible with your database management system. So your database management system, basically it stores the information in a structured way, in a structured format. Oracle, Access, these are database management systems. And your anxiety would be that your application programs which process your payment received from the customers, your bills or your invoices, all such programs, they should be compatible or they should be properly integrated with the database management system. If that integration is not there, this compatibility is missing, then the smoothness of your operations would be affected on your e-commerce shop. Then the third feature that you may want to add in your e-commerce software package, that is web services. Web services are defined to be those software tools using which you can connect to certain organizations, certain sources of information over a network with the help of standard protocols. You receive certain information from these sources directly, and then you can utilize that information for your particular purposes. Like, I give you an example. Say, I want to update and I want to collect all the information, the financial management information about my business, my company. For that matter, it would be possible with the help of web services software that, say, the bank account detail is collected from a different site, from a different organization, and my balance account information is obtained from some source. My stock price information is obtained, is collected from a particular source, and whatever interest or charges I have to pay on certain financial instruments, all that information can also be picked up from an independent source. So in this fashion, different financial information from various different sources, with the help of a network, that information is received by our web services software, and then that information is utilized for our benefit. Another example is that where we want to buy certain items, say some raw material for our business from online vendors or sellers, then our web services software would be equipped with these features, that it can analyze the prices quoted by different vendors and their delivery time, and based on that it can submit an order, and it can then track the shipment of those goods. So all these different unique features, they can be added up to our e-commerce site if we go for web services software as a part of our e-commerce software package. We shall continue with the discussion on different features that e-commerce software can provide. But for the time being, we have to stop here. The time for our today's lecture is over. And we shall meet in our next lecture, inshallah. Till then, Allah Hafiz.